Do you find yourself rushing to send trade transaction documents before bank's cutoff time? Are you having trouble tracking your transaction status? Do you dread going through endless phone calls just to find out your available balance? Well, you don't have to anymore. Introducing the Alliance BizSmart mobile app, the first in Malaysia that lets you submit trade transactions anytime, anywhere. No more hard copy documents. Submit everything online. Track your available balance and transaction status online. Fast disbursement of funds within 24 hours upon approval. Just follow these steps. 1. Log in to the BizSmart mobile app. 2. Key in the transaction details. 3. Upload the documents and submit for payment authorizer approval. And 4. You'll receive a notification upon approval. Now, you can spend more time on growing your business. The Alliance BizSmart mobile app. Speak to our dedicated relationship manager to find out more.
Enterprise data. It's your most valuable resource, but managing your data is challenging and complex, and it's not generating enough strategic value. Your data is siloed, and it's fragmented both within those silos, as well as across data centers, remote offices, and clouds. Multiple point solutions to manage your data further compound the fragmentation problem. You also maintain multiple copies of the same data, which is inefficient and expensive. And your data is dark. It's almost impossible to see what you have and where it's stored. To extract any value, you have to move volumes of data across silos and locations. All these challenges create a significant problem for the enterprise. We call this mass data fragmentation. At Cohesity, we take a revolutionary approach to bringing value to your data. We looked at how hyperscalers like Google answered this challenge in the consumer space. They consolidated consumer data onto a web-scale file system and added a layer of manageability to make it appear as a single platform. Then they exposed the value of that data through apps and services. At Cohesity, we are doing the same for enterprise data. We start by consolidating infrastructure with a software-defined web-scale platform. And just like Google first focused on building a great search engine, we focused on creating a great backup solution across clouds and data centers. Then we eliminated additional silos by bringing together your archive, file shares, dev test, and analytics. We provide one global management console so you can search and manage all your data from a single interface, no matter where it lives. Next, you can run apps and services to run your business-critical needs, such as ransomware protection, compliance checks, analytics, e-discovery, and much more. All in a single software solution that spans your data centers and multi-cloud environments. Cohesity, data management redefined.
Today and every day, you are doing the impossible. In a time that's been completely unpredictable, you're doing it with so little time and under so much pressure. You are juggling and jabbing, mobilizing and modernizing, remote learning and emphasis on the learning.
Sorry, guys. I don't know how to turn this thing off.
You are traveling and transforming, researching and resilienting. Okay, that's not a word, but you know what I mean. You are watching and welcoming, opening and, oh, wait, now you're closing, and now you're opening again. For businesses around the world, it's a real challenge because increasing disruption comes with increasing complexity and an increasing need to have today's problems solved yesterday. That's why businesses are rethinking everything. Using hybrid cloud and AI with IBM, they're working not just productively, but predictively, automating processes to simplify the complex, keeping private data protected, and adapting to ever-changing consumer habits. In a year that was like no other, businesses are taking a scientific approach with IBM to invent, discover, and solve problems like no one else. There's a lot to do, but together, we've got this. Together, we push, prove, demo, dare, work, wow, solve, spark, think.
Change happens, with or without our input. It can be imposed upon us, pushed at us, mandated. But we can take control and transform with intent. We can choose to embrace change, openly. To us, change is a state of being, not a box to check. It's the journey and the destination. It's a wider view, revealing better business outcomes. But the path is critical, because you can't change the whole without transforming the way. So it's time we leave impossible behind and open possibilities. Let's use open technology to work smarter. Let's open the process for efficiency and freedom. And let's build an open culture on empowerment and collaboration. Together, we can put digital transformation into practice. It can't happen in a vacuum, but an organization can transform using an open approach. With Red Hat, you can open your future. Open your technology. Open your process. Open your culture. Open possibility.
Visa pioneered the electronic payments business more than 60 years ago, envisioning a world in which paying for something could be translated into electrons and photons that move across the globe at the speed of light.
The consumer may access an infinite range of goods and services whenever he chooses, wherever he may be.
Today, there are 3.4 billion Visa credentials around the world, from the largest cities to remote communities across the globe.
Hey everyone, sorry we had a little bit of a technical glitch. I know some of you couldn't hear me, so let me begin again. All right, hi everyone, and good afternoon to you, and we hope you had a good lunch break. Welcome to the grand finale of Star Media Group's Digital Financing Conference. And for those of you who are first timers, we are so happy to have you, whether you're tuning in from WebEx, Facebook, YouTube, or LinkedIn. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Myra Baiti, and I am your host for this live virtual conference. Just a quick technical reminder for WebEx viewers: to optimize your view of the conference, please go to the View tab on your top left and untick the option Show Participants Without Video. If you're watching this from Malaysia or anywhere at all, how are you? We hope that you continue to stay safe and well as we enter the second year of the pandemic. And we would love to hear from you. So let us know how you are doing and where you're from, where you're watching this from. Type it in the chat box or the comment section below. We would love to get to know you. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people here at the conference would love to get to know you as well. All right, so moving on to our event. In commemoration of Star Media Group's 50th anniversary, the Digital X Data 2021 Road to Malaysia 5.0 event series is dedicated to enabling digitally powered businesses to accelerate growth in the nation's digital economy, as well as to drive innovative change amongst our society in building a human-centered nation powered by disruptive technologies. I hope you're excited with the Digital X Data event programs that we have lined up. And if you are, please collaborate. If you don't know what else we can do, you can go to our website and check it out. But we would love to collaborate with you for our future events. So please connect with us at events@thestar.com.my to learn more about the Digital X Data events, the speaking opportunities and partnership opportunities that you can have, and you can leverage on our integrated events and media services so that we can provide information, learn, and engage together. All right, so more about this conference. This conference is themed Powering a Cashless Economy. And here you will learn from this conference on about innovations, advantages, and the risks of digital financial services within the accelerated digital economy development in Malaysia. Amongst the things that we'll be discussing, we will be discussing disruption of traditional finance to make financial services universally accessible, and in molding a more resilient and transparent economic system. This two-day conference program is powered by 30 forward-thinking multinational thought leaders, business decision makers, industry experts, and subject gurus who will be sharing and discussing the road to shaping a cashless economy and powering a cashless economy. Without these amazing leaders, we would not be able to have and share the information that we have today. So if you're interested in them or you want to learn more about the conference agenda, and as well as the speaker profiles, you may scan the QR code on the top right of your screen, or you can go to bit.ly/STARDGFIN. So it's bit.ly/STARDIGIFIN. The link is also right next to the QR code for your reference. All right, guys, so before we start, we would like to announce the prize draw winners of this morning's session. And yes, you heard it right. For those of you who have just joined us, you have one last chance to win these cool prizes, and all you need to do is stay with us till the end of the session and you will stand a chance to win one of these prizes. So let's see who are the winners from this morning session. The Samsung Galaxy Fit goes to Dixon Silva. The Samsung Wireless Charger Pad goes to Peter Chen. And the Samsung Galaxy Buds go to Murali. So congratulations to all of the winners. Thank you so much for filling out our survey, and I hope that you enjoy your gifts. Our event crew will be contacting you separately after the event to pass the gifts to you. Now, let's take a look at the program lineup that we have for this session. Our knowledge partner, McKinsey & Company, will be opening this session by enlightening us with the opportunities and challenges of the latest buzzword in the financial services, which is decentralized finance, or how I prefer to refer to it, which is DeFi. That's a big D, small e, big F, small I. That's how you know that it is in the future when you have different cases in one word. Joking. So then our terabyte partner Cohesity will be keeping us on our toes with the sharing on redefining of data management and ransomware protection to boost digital financing resiliency. We will be wrapping up with the grand finale with a very urgent and timely panel discussion on the future of digital financing. The panel consists of a powerful lineup of international DeFi, blockchain, and cryptocurrency thought leaders and subject matter experts. It's also an international panel, guys. Our guest speakers will be dialing in from Singapore, Switzerland, Taiwan, and Malaysia. So if you're excited with the program of this session, please let us know. If you have any suggestions, you have any thoughts, type it down in the chat box in the comment section. Share. It will be amazing. And also, again, if you want to learn any more about our conference agenda as well as the speaker profiles, if I was speaking too fast, I apologize, but you can go and scan the QR code on the top right of your screen or go to bit.ly/STARDGFIN in order to access that information. All right, so before we start, we have a few quick housekeeping matters before we begin. After more than a year of participating in webinars and online events like this, you and I both know that there are always going to be unforeseen risks at any live online events, just like what happened at the start of this session. We thank you for your patience, and we hope that we can have your patience if you experience any technical or internet glitches in the future. If you do need any assistance from us, please do chat with our events crew, or you can also email us at events@thestar.com.my, and we will do the best we can to assist you. If you have any questions for our speakers, you may post it in the chat box or in the comment section if you are viewing this on Facebook, YouTube, or LinkedIn. If any of our speakers do not have the sufficient time to address your question, the question will be passed to the speakers and they will address it separately offline. Lastly, and most importantly, we want you to engage, learn, and enjoy with us. All right. Decentralized finance, or DeFi, is a blockchain-based form of finance that does not rely on central financial intermediaries or transaction administration. DeFi is one of the biggest revolutions in the financial technology systems of our time. And to kick off the session, our knowledge partner McKinsey and Company will be enlightening us with the opportunities and challenges of decentralized finance. In McKinsey, Anutosh Banerjee serves leading financial services organizations on strategy, operation topics, including digital transformation and building new businesses. He advises clients in Asia and Europe on digital and analytics, wealth and asset management, as well as corporate and investment banking. So he is dialing up and warming up soon to share all his knowledge. If you guys have any questions, drop it down below. All right, stay tuned. Anutosh will be up shortly. Bye, guys.
Hello, everybody. It's good to be here. My name is Anutosh Banerjee. I'm a partner with McKinsey and Company based in Singapore. I'm a leader in our banking practice and lead our work in blockchain and digital assets across the region. It's a lot of pleasure that I have by taking you through a discussion on the opportunities and challenges of decentralized finance. So we have about 20 to 30 minutes to talk about decentralized finance, which is never enough time for a topic like this, which is such an exciting new area emerging into finance and moving very, very rapidly as well. But we'll try to cover some of the basics, look at opportunities from an investor lens, but also particularly from a participant lens in financial services, and then end with sort of challenges, and which can also give us embedded within it where the sector can go. So let's sort of start with a first element really of why digital assets are relevant today. But before I even sort of take you through what's on this page, maybe just to sort of step back as to why are we talking about this now. And we probably should go back and understand the whole nature of the internet itself. And the whole opportunity starts from the billions of people who are connected to the internet relative to the billions of people who have access to a bank account. And the people who have access to the internet are just a multitude or order of magnitude more than individuals that have access to a bank account. And that's where the opportunity comes from. And why now is, if you think about the internet or the web, we have had sort of 3 iterations of the web so far. So we started with Web 1.0 in the late 90s. We came into Web 2.0 in early 2000s at the beginning of the century. And then we've been living through Web 3.0, which in a way started from more or less around 2016. And Web 1.0 really gave us the opportunity to have the internet as we know it, which is basically we could share information. We could put up a website and we could understand what's on the website. So really more or less a read kind of internet that we knew in the late 90s. We then came to a Web 2.0, which allowed us the ability to read and write. That also allowed us the opportunity to contribute back to the internet. And that gave rise to social media, mobiles also came about. And that sort of really took off in terms of the users from the millions who were in Web 1.0 to the billions who are using the internet today in Web 2.0. But as I described in 2016 or so, what people call the semantic web, where you can sort of read, write, and execute. And sort of machines or devices can not only read and contribute information, but they can also execute real time. And that semantic web really takes the users from, if you think about the machines and the individuals using it, potentially up to the trillions. And we are just at the beginning of this era. And you're seeing that unfold in financial services in the form of decentralized finance. So that's the opportunity and the context behind digital assets. But if we just step into digital assets and look at why are they relevant today. So there are 3 elements you can distill it into perhaps. One of them are the value pools are quite significant. And we'll sort of look through whichever lens you look through it, either in terms of transaction volumes in the largest digital assets or the number of people who are owning some form of cryptocurrency across the globe, or you look at the market capitalization of some of the largest digital assets, it's actually quite high. The second is user engagement. And you can look at many different ways to know that digital assets really drive user engagement. And you can argue that a lot of it is because of the inherent volatility of the asset class. But whatever the reason might be, it does drive users to engage with digital platforms that offer digital assets a lot more. And you can see that in evidence with, for example, PayPal. When PayPal enabled digital asset access inside their mobile wallet, users came in to check into the mobile wallet almost on a daily basis. And that drove off adoption for the period that they publicly reported up to 2 times than people who did not own digital assets on their mobile wallet. And digital assets clearly have been going through increasing adoption. And we don't see that anywhere else but here in Asia, right? I mean, there's the digital asset exchanges in Asia really contribute to a large amount of the global volume. And you've been sort of seeing also various reports coming through on what proportion of the population has owned cryptocurrency or a digital asset at some point. And that has been growing as a proportion of the population quite rapidly. So therefore, it's quite relevant today, and that's from the lens of us as individuals. Maybe let's move to the following page and look at the factors that are driving institutional participation. So it's not just individuals, but it's also institutions. And we've been reading it in the headlines where some pretty marquee financial institutions globally have been trying to participate in the opportunity that's been presented by digital assets. But again, you can take a step back and ask yourself, why is it now that we are seeing so much activity? So there are, again, several factors that have contributed to it. Some of them are around the regulatory clarity, as an example, and there are jurisdictions globally, let's say Switzerland or even in Asia, Singapore, and clearly all of us in Southeast Asia are seeing greater and greater regulatory clarity emerging. There's a lot more to be done, but that clarity has increased from what it was maybe 3 years ago or so. There has been more capital flooding into digital assets. I mean, initially, it was very much a retail user engagement that moved into sort of hedge funds, family offices, and we're seeing more and more capital come into some of these digital assets to take advantage of the returns that are on offer. Central banks, again, being driven by what we've been seeing, let's say, market-leading central banks, even in the region, with the e-yuan experiment out of China. More than 80% of central banks are experimenting with CBDCs. But more importantly, I think the underlying thing that we have to keep in mind is that the infrastructure that enables digital assets, because the market is quite different to traditional finance, and we'll just look into that on the next page, you need ecosystem around it to come together. And over the past 2 years, a fair amount of that ecosystem to allow us to custody or hold private keys that give us access to move digital assets, or being able to have insurance, cyber or specie insurance or other forms of insurance that can protect us as individuals and institutions, more importantly, access these assets. That whole ecosystem has matured. And it's become able to connect into traditional financial institutions in a way that they understand. That's giving them confidence also to participate in this. And the opportunity, again, is large, which is driving the capital flooding in. And if you look at, barring the volatility that we're observing now, which has been a feature of the market in any case, if you look at a 3-year return threshold for the top 10 kind of digital assets, it has been outpacing the typical equity indices and other asset class returns in the past. So that has been driving also institutional participation. So far we've seen that users are coming in, institutions are coming in. Now let's sort of look at what DeFi is and where is it coming upon. And if we go to the next page. Now this page is thinking about the evolution of digital assets. And the evolution of digital assets, we are trying to simplify it and look at it in 3 kind of waves. So we've seen the first wave where the store of value in cryptocurrencies has been sort of going through since the advent really of Bitcoin as one of the significant digital assets that came about. We've moved into sort of a second wave where central banks are getting involved. So in the first wave, what happened was there was a new type of digital currency that was running on distributed immutable ledgers. There were transactions that were getting enabled by smart contracts. That's already a lot in the first wave. In the second wave, when programmable money comes in, where central banks can literally program money to be operating in a certain manner or under a certain environment, certain preconditions. And that also can then settle or make payments 24/7 instantaneously. That is a pretty powerful functionality that the second wave could unlock. Now, DeFi really comes into being in the third wave, where financial services and assets in a truly native digital format or tokenized assets, they can interact with digital banking. And that creates new kinds of yields for consumers, and it really enables new types of functionality for users. And we'll touch upon that aspect of it in this document and this presentation later on. So with that, if I move to the next page, a bit dense, but what it's trying to do is to compare and contrast decentralized finance with traditional finance. What you see is, if you start from the top, that's where us as users exist. And as we go deeper into these layers, we unravel more and more part of the underlying infrastructure that makes up either traditional finance as we know it today, or decentralized finance as we are uncovering and understanding now. These layers, I mean, if you start from the bottom, is how layers start. So you have at the very bottom, you have layer 0, then layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, layer 4. And we typically sort of interact with the decentralized finance at many layers. What users typically see are very user-friendly digital decentralized finance apps. And the level of user experience, because the decentralized finance infrastructure is natively digital, the user experience is very high. I mean, it's a pretty sophisticated user experience that the DeFi apps are able to create, which drives consumer engagement. That compares to the banking apps, and we're pretty familiar with those functions around storing, transferring, investing, and so on and so forth that the banks offer. If you go one level under, there are other, decentralized finance apps that give you access to peer-to-peer transactions that can be enabled. That compares with intermediaries as we know it, like asset managers or other kind of financial services intermediaries that exist in that application layer. If you go further still, you have these kinds of protocols and smart contracts that enable a fair amount of complex functions to be carried out, that financial services and financial institutions typically have created and crafted for us, partly digitally, partly through sort of manual interventions. If you go further in, you come into sort of the asset classes or the tokens. And there we know the central bank sort of money that comes through licensed institutions on the traditional finance side. And at the bottom is the settlement layer. And in decentralized finance, the settlement layer is the blockchain. And in traditional finance, the settlement layer is the central bank ledger, other kinds of instantaneous or otherwise payment systems. So those are kind of comparisons, and you can draw comparisons and comparables. But if you look at users on the next page, you'll see that DeFi more recently has had this kind of explosive growth. And this chart you must have sort of seen in many different contexts, I'm hoping, before, but the value locked in decentralized finance kind of has gone through pretty explosively recently. And there are several metrics on this page that I won't really go into too much, but it's fairly important to appreciate the growth that is coming through because of all the reasons that I went through just now. So the maturity is still early days, but the transaction volumes and usage of these DeFi networks has gone up. So what does DeFi really allow us to do? So again, this is trying to sort of simplify the use cases that we see today. Essentially, if you start from the top, you have the use case around exchange liquidity, where users can commit their digital assets to decentralized exchanges, and there are several of them. I mean, Uniswap, SushiSwap, and so on and so forth. There are risks that users face. I mean, there's still quite a lot of swing in the underlying asset, and the smart contracts are essentially pieces of code. And there is risk in trusting those smart contracts in a way that the transactions are immutable, but the returns on offer, as is on the page, can be quite high. And so it is quite attractive to a certain cross-section of the population. The second one is around collateralized lending or short selling, where users can commit the digital asset into a lending pool. The third is arbitrage lending. And again, this is kind of users committing digital assets to an arbitrage pool. And then transaction validation, users can commit, again, digital assets into staking pools. I won't really go through the technicalities of these because it can get very technical quite a lot, and we'll discuss some of this in the challenges section later on. But what's fair to keep in mind is that these returns on offer, and you compare that to the environment that we operate in now, with low interest rates and asset classes getting quite correlated with each other, can and are quite attractive if they can be accessed in a manner which is comparable to how we are used to using financial services today. So with that in mind, if we go to the next page, I'll take through sort of two basic applications. One is this page, which is trying to show DeFi as an application enabled by a smart contract, where it's trying to replicate what a bank does, which is borrowing, lending, deposits, basic banking functions. And we'll look at on the next page some of the capital markets activities where DeFi can become quite critical. So without getting too much into the flows around this page, but essentially this is showing a decentralized finance example that is enabling pool-to-pool use cases of lending and trading or exchange. Users can deposit their funds in a smart contract. Funds are pooled and the risk is shared amongst all of the users. The returns generated have their parallel in traditional finance. So you can sort of understand the concept from traditional finance anyway. And the revenues generated are returned back to the users using smart contracts. So there's no central governance, there is no overhead, and therefore the returns can be more high than what is typically observed in a traditional finance anyway. But primarily the returns in the decentralized finance applications are driven by the underlying very high market volatility that we see. So higher the volatility in a way benefits these kinds of returns, especially on an aspect of decentralized finance, which is creating stability like stable coins. And then the disruptive use cases will continue to come up, but there are several of these smart contracts that have a fair amount of value locked and a fair amount of maturity is coming into this market. If we take a step further and look at decentralized finance from a more capital markets lens, and this is showing 3 applications around shareholder governance, asset issuance, clearing and settlement. So there are, the current state is what we see on this page in front of you, but there could be a lot more that could happen in terms of the art of the possible looking ahead. So digitally issued equities could enable easier shareholder governance, and that shareholder governance could also be more responsive, could allow more democratization of shareholder governance also coming in, leading to greater accountability of companies. It could also become easier to list on financial markets, especially for small and mid-sized enterprises. And so the ability to access capital markets doesn't have to be as high if we are talking about decentralized way of asset issuance for entities. And the clearing and settlement could mean that there is instant clearing and settlement via digital currencies directly on an exchange. There could be obviously several issues that might create. I mean, not all institutions would like for instantaneous settlements. They might prefer the current settlement method, which gives them some time to source for funds and settle securities and other kinds of business models that exist because of the inefficiencies in the current market will probably have to be reconsidered. But the power of this to open up new kinds of business models still cannot be understated. So that essentially is the application in financial markets. So far we've touched upon why digital finance is decentralized finance is coming into our lives in the context of Web 3.0, why the excitement of individual users is also permeating into institutions, and where we see applications for it in kind of a traditional banking use case or also markets use cases. Maybe let's turn to some of the near-term challenges that need to be addressed as we look to scale decentralized finance further. And that within it will also have perhaps some clues of where decentralized finance can go. So currently, as we just looked through, there's a fair amount of layering of decentralization in the DeFi environment, which mirrors traditional finance. There are no intermediaries, however, and the decentralized finance works through smart contracts and the programmability of contracts and software and code. Within that, therefore, there is an issue of throughput or transaction fees that comes up, which then inhibits scalability. And there are several kinds of technological solutions being considered to look at whether everything needs to settle on the layer 0 blockchain, as we looked at, and whether we can enhance scalability of these platforms by leveraging other applications across different layers of the blockchain infrastructure. There are several parallels of that in traditional finance also. For example, when we trade equities, not every particular trade that we as users put through our intermediaries, be it a bank or a broker dealer, ends up getting settled one for one on an exchange. There's a fair amount of market making, fair amount of internalization of flows, and other kinds of innovations that have happened that allows us to really benefit from having the greater sense of liquidity and more functionalities that are available to us as users. Some of that needs to permeate and make its way into DeFi, but there are currently scalability challenges and throughput challenges, and transaction fees can be quite high. The second is a conundrum within decentralized finance. So there is the conundrum of centralization. So how far do we want to push decentralization and keep centralization out of DeFi to keep a very purist view versus not, in the context of user experience that we look at as one of the other challenges in this space. So the centralization comes in the following way. So let's say if you're a user, you want to access some of the decentralized finance functionalities and gain those returns. So you would have to go into the decentralized finance world. To go into the decentralized finance world, you would need access to a token. To get access to a token, you would have to take some of the fiat currencies. Let's say, for example, we take some US dollars, open an account at Coinbase, find a way to move that into an exchange like that. Then that allows us to exchange those fiat currencies into, let's say, a stable coin or into a token on the blockchain itself. Could be an Ethereum, could be a Bitcoin, or so on and so forth. We can then, once we have these stable coins or cryptocurrencies, we can then take advantage of the smart contracts that we talked about. Let's say we take advantage of such a protocol and we use some kind of an intermediary wallet on the internet to transfer that across into the protocol. And that's when we can start accessing some of the returns that we talked about. But the entry point is controlled by an exchange, which can, in more or less occasions, be a centralized exchange. So greater the volume of decentralized finance, the more centralization we are sort of also incurring as an expense in this process. So if you take a purist lens, is that truly DeFi or is that more centralization? So there's that conundrum that needs to be resolved as a challenge in this space. The third point is quite an important point. So it's a very complex point, and that's why progress has been non-linear in this space. And there's been a fair amount of volatility as some of the clarity comes through in the near term, which then is an expense as the market takes the next step forward. And that clarity is required at multiple levels. So we talked about regulations earlier. There's clearly, as more and more institutions get in, what is the accounting treatment for these kinds of decentralized finance, digital assets that are getting access to through DeFi as they get on balance sheets of corporations? What's the accounting framework? How should the tax be thought about? What happens if smart contracts really have a code error? So what kind of legal audit frameworks would be put in place to provide for those errors and accounting for them properly? And obviously the whole underlying issue of consumer protection comes into this. So it's a pretty big challenge that DeFi has to overcome. And some of these challenges are also some things that we incur in our traditional finance mechanisms. And again, they have to permeate into the DeFi world. And the last one, I sort of touched upon that as we went through the context of centralization. And this is around the fragmentation of user experience. There's, again, several things that need to happen or can come into place for this. But the user experience, while in some of these different applications, in and of themselves, the digital experience is very high. But because of the fragmentation of the various protocols at scale still, the user experience tends to get quite fragmented. And the users may or may not be fully aware of the lack of the traditional safety nets that they used to in traditional finance. So for example, if they lose access, the private keys, they can't call Ethereum Foundation or someone to retrieve it for them, and they can't really walk back a transaction if it's done on stable coins, as an example. So there's a fair amount of user education that needs to happen alongside a much more unified customer experience along these protocols. So this is just a flavor. As I said earlier, 30 minutes is never enough to take you through a topic on DeFi. But I hope that It gave enough of an opportunity for us to touch upon what DeFi means, what does it open up as potential opportunities, and what are the near-term challenges. With that, I would thank you for your time and give it back to the host, please.
Thank you very much, Anutosh, for such a great presentation. If you'd like to hear more from Anutosh and learn more about DeFi, Anutosh will be back at the closing power panel later. And guys, in the next session, you will learn from our Terabyte partner as well, Cohesity on the redefinement of data management and ransomware protection to boost digital financial resiliency. Powering this session is Sheena Chin, the Managing Director of Cohesity ASEAN. With more than 20 years in enterprise technology, with more than 20 years of experience in enterprise technology ecosystems, Sheena has extensive experience in developing deep customer engagements with large global customers and securing strategic wins in hyper-competitive markets. Joining Sheena is Satish Murthy, who is the Director of Systems Engineering for Cohesity ASEAN and India. Satish's current focus is to help customers transform by harnessing the power of data. So guys, stay tuned, stay on your toes. Sheena and Satish will be up shortly. See you guys.
Enterprise data. It's your most valuable resource, but managing your data is challenging and complex, and it's not generating enough strategic value. Your data is siloed, and it's fragmented both within those silos, as well as across data centers, remote offices, and clouds. Multiple point solutions to manage your data further compound the fragmentation problem. You also maintain multiple copies of the same data, which is inefficient and expensive, and your data is dark. It's almost impossible to see what you have and where it's stored. To extract any value, you have to move volumes of data across silos and locations. All these challenges create a significant problem for the enterprise. We call this mass data fragmentation. At Cohesity, we take a revolutionary approach to bringing value to your data. We looked at how hyperscalers like Google answered this challenge in the consumer space. They consolidated consumer data onto a web-scale file system and added a layer of manageability to make it appear as a single platform. Then they exposed the value of that data through apps and services. At Cohesity, we are doing the same for enterprise data. We start by consolidating infrastructure with a software-defined web-scale platform. And just like Google first focused on building a great search engine, we focused on creating a great backup solution across clouds and data centers. Then we eliminated additional silos by bringing together your archive, file shares, dev test, and analytics. We provide one global management console so you can search and manage all your data from a single interface, no matter where it lives. Next, you can run apps and services to run your business-critical needs, such as ransomware protection, compliance checks, analytics, e-discovery, and much more. All in a single software solution that spans your data centers and multi-cloud environments. Cohesity, data management redefined.
Sheena, start please.
Oh, hi, good afternoon, everyone. I am Sheena from Cohesity. I'm the managing director for ASEAN. And I'm here with my colleague Satish, who's my counterpart. He's the head of system engineering for ASEAN. So thanks for having us here today. And I really want to wish everyone herein safe and well. We are in the middle of a pandemic, right? So the number one key focus that I sincerely wish for everyone is to stay healthy and be immutable. So therefore, I really, really hope everybody has made plan to complete the vaccination soon, right? So similarly, to successfully complement digital financing, powering a cashless economy, we need to ensure that we are able to keep our data immutable and accessible. So especially now that most of us are working from home and we are therefore digitally connected. That also means we are operating in the cyber world and therefore we are subject to cyber threats. So apart from being protected from cyber attacks, organizations today are also in need to ensure that their data platform is able to scale. And this is to help them protect the huge data that is perpetually growing all the time. And at the same time, to give you back the economies of scale in terms of IT budget. Because gone are the days that we have the luxury of big IT budget to spend. So every dollar that you invest in your IT technology, it has to serve more data management rather than just a single purpose. However, the reality is this, right? While many organizations are doing well in implementing great technologies to meet demands, there is a side effect though. That is the creation of data sprawl, complexity, multiple silos, which often requires huge amount of manpower or even other resources just to maintain it. And data created is also stored in many locations and it gets very fragmented. And when that happens, vulnerability surfaces. So many data protection or backup technologies that we have work very well. In fact, if you
One.
Hello, everyone. We are back. My apologies for the glitch. Things happen, disruption happen, right? So all the more we need to make data very, very resilient to disruptions like that so that our business can go on. So where was I? I was talking about, many organizations are dealing with, struggling with legacy systems and yet trying to keep up with, having the nimble ability to get access to data and to stay very protected. Right. So I'm just naming an example on how some of this legacy can be weighing everybody down. Right. So for example, if you look at a very legacy backup technology, I just named this simple example of performing a restoration. Many a times, the restoration process is painful, lengthy, and often not even successful. So essentially, we are putting ourselves at risk, and let alone running in a very optimized mode. So if you are really planning to modernize and redefine data management, please kindly make sure, all the following 4 pointers that I'm going to highlight are to be seriously considered. The data platform that you want to look at should be able to help you scale. It should be able to take huge amount of data as it comes in. And it should be able to also be friendly to your wallet. It has to give you economies of scale so that whatever you're investing in is going to be future proofing. That's just one. Second, it has to give you the portability, help you move from one side to another, from on-premise to the cloud, or even from cloud to cloud, or be able to come back. And thirdly, it has to give you the immunity, right? Just like us in the COVID-19 world today, we need to make sure data is immutable, not to be writable. And finally, in the event should disaster happen, should a ransomware were to hit our system, how do you make sure that you can confidently find it and be able to restore it instantaneously, right? Because of the competition of the demands, it can't wait, and therefore we need to be very fast to be able to locate and restore so that your business can go on. Satish and I are in the practice of working with organizations to redefine data management. It is absolutely doable, even just by making some small steps and slowly expanding to as many purposes, as many use cases as you want. So make data work for infinite purposes, make it future-proof, and make sure you get the essential protection and immunity. So which you will be hearing from Satish in a while. So I hope you will find what we're going to share today useful, especially to help drive the ability to be nimble, confident, and safe in this digital economy. So thanks for allowing me to kick this off and sharing my perspective. I'm going to hand this session next to my colleague Satish to take you through what we mean by modernizing data management. Over to you, Satish.
Thank you, Sheena. Hi, good afternoon. This is Satish here from Systems Engineering of Cohesity. And I'm going to walk you through redefining intelligent data management in the multi-cloud era. Right, I'm sure you had a great day today hearing through different content. And I'll be walking through this particular solution in terms of what would be the next generation thought process in terms of managing data and also in terms of maintaining security for our solution. Now let's look at one quick feel of the data explosion that we have today. Now just imagine the amount of data that we have been creating. Massive, right? Just think about it. The amount of data that you generated from the morning to this time today, which is now about 3 p.m., how much data did we create? Just think about it. And you may be surprised because here is the clue. Every day, per second, per day, per year, the number of tweets that goes on is 6,000 tweets per second, 500 million per day, and 200 billions of tweets per year. That includes photos, that includes videos, that includes the messaging people do. Now, the number of videos that get uploaded is 720,000 hours of video content uploaded daily. Staggering, isn't it? Now, if you look at the data generated every second, which is why I asked you, since the morning, how much of data did we generate? Is about 1.7 megabytes every second. You may be wondering, where is it coming? It may be from your phone, it may be from the streets, the cameras, everything that we touch, the digital devices that we touch, the sensors that generate. These are incredible amount of data that is exploding. Think about the IoTs, the video generated, the edge devices, anything that a CCTV records, anything that we pass through, every one of them is having a phenomenal growth of data. And you look at even more, the future holds even increase in the explosion of data. Now, if you relate that, these are significant in external world, that also implies within an organization in the data center, you are having this staggering growth. Now that gives us a number like in 2021, we are looking at a growth from 50 exabytes to grow to 175x zettabytes, right? 50 zettabytes right today to about 175 zettabytes in next 3 years or 4 years in time. Now that is incredible. If you look at from the data storage perspective, this is the current status. 50 zettabytes with a linear curve of increase in data marked by global data sphere from IDC. They clearly state this is already staggering in terms of zettabytes of data growth. Now, even more, in the next 3 to 4 years, we would outpace it 3 to 4 times to reach 175 zettabytes of data. That is just staggering, right? Unbelievable amount of data. Now, think about this way in a different perspective. If I pack them into a hard disk, I need 2.8 billion hard disk or hard drives today, right? To pack about 50 zettabytes. If I have to pack them in containers in a ship, I need 31,000 containers, we can imagine. If I have to power it up, all up, if you look at from a perspective of the data, we need 16,000 megawatt of power. This is the incredible amount of data that people are churning out as of today. And you do the carbon emission, 16 gigaton. Now that is as of just of today. Now you take that and extrapolate to the next 4 years, you end up with 9.7 billion hard disk. Container ships worth of 110,000, 58,000 megawatts. You could power up a country with that, right? And carbon emissions, 58 gigatons. So those are how much of data explosion that is happening today in the environment. You, me, our team, everybody in our enterprise, in the customers we work with, every one of them is generating data. Everything is in a connected world, and more and more and more data gets generated. So, but if you look at a different perspective here, we have massive amount of data, Now you will hear a new phrase, the great data unusage. So you have truckload of data. We generate massive amount of that 175 zettabytes. Now, how much of them is really used? There's a significant portion, what we call it as dark data. Dark data, what a definition, it says the information assets organizations collect, process, and store during regular business activities, right? They generate them, but generally fail to use for other purpose. So it is just generated and do nothing with it. So of that 50 zettabytes, of that 175 zettabytes, I would say majority of them is dark data. Now, if we look at furthermore, Splunk research shows that 55% in an organization in every single customer's data center is dark. I have massive amount of data, but I don't know what kind of data is stored, who is using it, what are they doing, is it really valuable? I have no idea. Veritas did another study with Databerg, and they found out pretty close, 54% of the data an average customer uses as dark data. IBM, who does a lot of sensor-based architectures, 90% of sensory data that is collected is just wasted because it's not used. Only 10% is used for programming and others, and in terms of manufacturing and all other processes, but 90% of them is dark data. Now, given that means there's a truckload of, what do I say, an unnecessary usage of resources. That gives me another slide to talk about need versus actual. Every person, which is me in this particular example, every day I would use a pair of socks in a simple way because I like to talk about simple things to share with you. And if I use it for 7 days, I need 7 pairs. And if I had a backup plan coming from a backup organization, I would have 2 additional socks pairs, which ends up with 9 pairs. That's all probably we need. But if you look at my draw, it shows that I have enormous amount of socks pair. It is a very simple example, but it clearly articulates that there is more than what we really use and what we really need. There's phenomenal amount of things that we consume in a data center that is not really related to business. Now that gives you another thought process here. You look at your data, which is your data, which is in your enterprise, where you aggregate all of them. You have disparate systems, massive amount of systems, structured data, Oracle, SAP, SQL, right? Microsoft applications, unstructured data, infrastructure applications, video surveillance, logs and sensors, analytical data. There's truckload of all of these as your data. Now, centralizing all of these, if you think about it, makes you much easier to consume, isn't it? You connect all the rivers into one big reservoir and one big tap. Across the country, you can serve anybody. And exactly, if you have all these connected by one single reservoir, it is much easy to use and consume. Going on, if you look at from that perspective, what is the one which aggregates everybody in your data center? It is the backup. Backup aggregates all of this data into one central pool, which is typically unused, right? But backup is connected to Oracle, SQL, SAP, HANA, unstructured data, infrastructure, video surveillance, sensors, analytical, you name it. Everything is connected to backup because every organization, every team believes if I have a backup, I am safe. Need not be. That's another story for talking about. But backup is an aggregator. And that means traditionally, backup data, I take a backup, it is kept as an insurance. We don't use it again unless there is a disaster. Agree? Maybe use it for 6 months, and that is pretty much what you need to do. Anything beyond is just sitting there, consuming floor space, power, cooling, a truckload of other resources, and backup data has to be reused and rethought about how do we take advantage of this. Now, if I categorize them in any data center, 5 to 10% are the primary data, and that is the most expensive of your tier. And they run the most critical databases, which may be your business applications, your structured applications like Oracle, SQL. They are the business value generating. You ask me, they generate the revenue. It tells you how many chemicals are there. It tells you how do I mix each of them. And these are the factory related things or banking related things or the core banking or call data records. You can name that. They are the value generating purpose. Now, the next set of data, which is 20 to 30%, are the supporting data. By the way, it is important. It's still important to your business, which is sharing files, emails, where you communicate with your end customers, where you talk to different people, delegate things, and so on. Office files, they are all mixed data types, and they still consume in terms of cost, but they are still valuable, still meaningful to your business. But the remaining 70 to 80% is insurance data. They are just backup data used for nothing else other than insurance. If it fails, I will use it. If something happens, I will use it. Now, how often have you ever recovered? That's a different discussion for us to talk, right? Have you ever recovered 2015 data? Have you ever recovered 2010 data? Then why do you keep it? If you can't recover, you should throw it away. Now, that's a key thing to think about. 70 to 80% of the data is actually negative revenue to any company. They are copy data, replicas, backups, archive, and these are important. I'm not saying they're not important, but they don't add any value as it is. They have 80% of your data in your data center, and they don't add any revenue back to you. Now, that is where Cohesity wants to change this thought process. We, as a backup aggregator, is a software-defined architecture that is actually a backup software that runs on any hardware, any cloud, any virtual machines that can plug into all of these databases, unstructured data, video surveillance, virtual machine, logs and sensors, and be as an aggregator. And if you relate to that, it is like an IT infrastructure data lake. So once we aggregate all of these, now you can do really, really cool things because you now collapse database, unstructured data, video surveillance, virtual machines, applications, logs, and sensors into one repository. It is similar to how you use your smartphone, right? You have many things in one. That now gives you the advantage of doing cloning for your business, for data masking, test and development, gives you a new edge in your business. Think about recovery testing. If you really have a pre-production or impact testing, you could do that. Think about e-discovery, where you have GDPR compliance and litigation search and audit search and things like that. That is huge. Ransomware detection. This is another important aspect to think about with any organization, to look at anomaly detection. Do I have ransomware today? I don't know. How about we tell you that you have it or not? Swift recovery, rapid recovery, which gives us the ability to do that. These are some of the cool things. As aggregator of backup, we could do that. Moving on, it gives you even more advantages when you go to the cloud, where you can spin up the cloud services right away on the IT infrastructure data lake. Gives you that advantage to hook on to AWS or Azure or Google Cloud and connect to their applications to bring this aggregated data of your company across different various gamuts of applications that bring back value to you. Now, that is thinking outside the box, right? To think about, if I do the same thing for last 30 years, 40 years, I do the backup this way, I do this way, I just keep the data this way. Great. Your company will still be the same because we have not started thinking outside the box. The clear definition to explore ideas that are creative and unusual, that are not limited and controlled by rules or tradition. It is not a heavy risk, but it is important to think about, how can I take advantage of the data? How can I protect my data? What value can we bring to the business? And that is taking the next step. Now, a couple of examples where I would share. One of them is Skylakes Medical. So Skylakes Medical is a very large hospital based in Oregon in the US. And they had a very unique case. They run on Cohesity, But very recently, they had a massive impact during the Christmas period that the entire data center was down due to ransomware. And ransomware, as you probably know, they come through emails, they sniff through a USB drive or something like that, and they ask you for money. They give you the Bitcoin wallet. If you don't transfer, goodbye to your data. So Skylex Medical were directly impacted by that. And what did they say? They had, luckily, Cohesity's architecture for backup, which is not just insurance, but it was able to detect that they had ransomware impact and went on to recover data rapidly. There are 562 servers and 3,000 endpoints were all collapsed, and Cohesity helped them to recover back their data. They went on to public to talk about Cohesity and how it changed their life. That's one customer. The second one would be another customer, which is a financial banking institution based in New Zealand. With our collaboration with DataMask, we gave them a solution which will help them to take a clone of their database. This unmask is actually a database table, and we could actually replace it with a masked database. That means it removes the sensitivity of the data and still presents with a data integrity structure for the database. So the application, the development team enjoy these services and they love this architecture because now they don't have to pay premium to the highest storage technologies, which are way more expensive than what Cohesity could offer. Now, data responsibility is all of us, you, me, and everybody that we know. One, reduce your footprint, only keeping the data that is required, making sure that data is useful throughout its lifespan, minimizing the amount of data copies, because 3, 2, 1, 4, 5, 6, that is all nice to know. But if you start keeping at the rate of 1 petabyte, that means you would have 7 petabytes at the end of the day. How cool is definitely the storage vendors enjoy, but from a thinking perspective, how does it add value to your business, right? Leverage data reduction technologies like deduplication and compression, and we will be happy to have a conversation around it. Use the data that you keep. Data protection like test and development, DR, recovery, search and compliance, and cloud services can be leveraged. So now you know that Cohesity is one data aggregator or an infrastructure IT data lake, if you call it. Right? Given that we are one platform that can aggregate all kinds of data inside, and it is one software-defined platform that can scale, data becomes so clunky that you can't move it away. 1 terabyte to copy from one location to another, how long does it take? 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 1 hour? How about 1 petabyte? Can you move that anymore? So if you are in any organization, if you have 100 terabyte, in 4 years, you are ending up with close to 500 terabyte. If you are at 1 petabyte, you are ending up with 5 petabyte. So how can you move anything to do any kind of analytics? Now that is what Cohesity allows to change, is we bring the applications to the data itself. We could bring these compute platforms like antivirus, endpoint protection, data masking, search, AWS Glue, AWS warehousing, all into the Cohesity platform. So you can embrace very similar to your smartphones, where you drag and drop WhatsApp, you drag and drop your Google Map, your so many other applications that make sense in your personal life. Similarly, you can drag and drop applications inside your data center, because Cohesity being the aggregator of data, you can double click and enjoy different data value, because data is the new oil and we keep repeating it, provided we know how to use it. And that is where Cohesity will help you to leverage, to take advantage of the data that you keep storing. Now let's look into ransomware in particular. Ransomware comes into any enterprise through an email or something like that. And most application servers are unaware because they don't know if it is ransomware. The security tools are good enough, but they don't stop an email from coming in. Now it comes in, and this is where the challenge is. Cohesity helps you in 3 important ways. 1, prevention. We are worm-capable system that is immutable. We can help you detect ransomware patterns on the backup images. Now using machine learning. using AI to let you know that you had ransomware yesterday or 2 days ago so that you know you can take a right action. And thirdly, having instant mass recovery, allowing you to recover data rapidly. And that is very, very critical because ransomware can bring down any business to its knees. So how fast can you recover is directly proportional to your business success. And that means using AI, we can actually look at detection, the rate of change of data, the entropy of data, the file modifications, and so on, and let you know that there is a ransomware. And more often or not, we will catch a ransomware very, very highly chance in terms of probability. In terms of security framework, Cohesity is built on a 5-layer architecture. In terms of preparation, we are secure by design and immutable file system. We control and restrict with role-based access control and no service backdoor. We comply to most of the worldwide industry security framework like FIP certifications, SEC 17A4, or data log compliance, PCI compliance, CEC compliance, and so on. Cohesity is another compliant. So it's important to understand that Cohesity technology, despite being the infrastructure data lake, we help you with compliance. And more than that is the last two tip of the pinnacle is detection of ransomware, very uniquely placed where we can find, because we are the backup aggregator using our technology of machine learning, we can let you know that based on the last 6 months, last 2 weeks, you're infected by ransomware. So you exactly know which copy is good, which copy is bad. And you actually pick the right copy and do an instant mass recovery so that you can go back in time. At rapid scale, at massive set of data, it is very, very important to understand this framework. Now, in order to summarize, Cohesity is a data management platform. We run on the cloud, we run on premises, we can run on a virtual infrastructure, and we provide different services. One of them is data backup or data protection. We provide file services, object services, dev and test, and cloud that changes the enterprise architecture to modernize it, to transform to 2021 and beyond is where you think about, right? And it's truly software defined because you are not ransom to a particular hardware. You know what happens? A hardware is tied to a software, and then you're locked onto it forever because you have to do a forklift and migration and so many complexities. We are not in 2001. We are in 2021. So things have to change. We have a simple management console, very similar to the google.com, where you can manage multiple sites in one. You can manage cloud sites, you can manage physical sites, remote sites. If you're any industry, you can collapse all these data and do one single search for a file, search for a database instance, and recover at any point in time. And on top, you have applications. You can build applications. Your partners can build applications. We bring our own applications and third-party applications like your App Store, like your Android Play Store. You can double-click and bring IT applications to life in your data center. You can create your own app. You can search for a credit card numbers inside the massive aggregated data. You have 2 petabytes of data today. Can you search for credit card numbers? Can you search for password numbers? It's almost impossible. People say this is like a hashtag and I'm searching for a pin. Very similar. And that's where Cohesity's architecture helps you to do that. And that is game changing to business. A lot of customers has transformed, and in the process of transforming, be it Malaysia, be it across ASEAN, any country today, Cohesity is helping customers transform with our partner solutions, and we'll be happy to listen to you again over the forum. Thank you very much.
Hi guys, welcome back. So thank you everyone for sending in your questions. So we're going to have a Q&A session with Satish and Sheena right now. So let me read just a few of these questions out loud, and then I will give Satish and Sheena the opportunity to answer this question. So our first question is from Tan, and the question is, can backup data be compromised by ransomware? Whichever of you guys can answer.
Okay, I'll take that question, Satish here. So, can the backup data be compromised? Great question, by the way. And that is one of the key reasons why you need Cohesity, right? Cohesity is an immutable file system. So that means we never do an overwrite. So you have a data block coming in, we actually write to the adjacent block. So when a ransomware comes in, it actually writes into an adjacent block. It will never compromise your original data. So that means your data is safe. Secondly, your solution, which you built with Cohesity, also helps you to detect ransomware and also give you the ability to recover rapidly. So in nutshell, you're very secure, though this is your last level of defense, because there are other security tools that are still needed for ransomware detection and prevention, but this is your last great wall, if you would call it, for your data. And this is important to be secure, and Cohesity will do that.
All right, thank you so much, Satish. I hope that answered your questions back at home. And also, Satish, do you have a YouTube account? Because I think you would do really good. I think you would do amazing, like with a YouTube account explaining all the things about data. You break it down really, really well.
We'll take
I
some
hope
tips from you.
Can. I will support. I'll be the first person to follow you. Okay, so we have another question from George. Thank you, George. The question is, it's a really good question as well. If I want to modernize data protection, what is the best way to get started?
Great question. Sheena, you want to take that?
Sure. So since most people today are concerned about ransomware, so I think really going down to the core to make sure, we set up the data to be having the right immunity level is very, very critical. So targeting at the use case of making sure, we are able to detect ransomware or to stay very immutable so that, when we set up the data protection system as our insurance policy, we have to really ensure that it works. So I think it's high time to relook at what we have or what the organizations have today and ensure that every restore action is truly, truly effective, because we have really heard too much nightmare about organizations failing to restore and therefore subject to paying penalties to regulators. So that should be the most critical approach. And for those organizations who have tons or loads of data that are already stuck with very, very old systems, fear not. There are also approaches for us to discuss with you following this session today to let us understand what your plan is, and we can talk about how you can get into a newer environment. There are many approaches to get around that.
Okay, thank you, Sheena. So, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong. From your answer, I guess the first step would be to organize data, and Cohesity has the consultancy capacity to look at each company and see what we can do with your data.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Sheena. Thank you for the answer, and thank you also for that question. We have two more questions to ask them, to ask Sheena and to ask Satish. So this next question is from Muhammad Haris Jaffrey. So this is a question regarding the machine learning aspect. So his question is machine learning already trained with the latest ransomware strains?
Oh, I love that question. Thank you. If I had known about the next ransomware, I would have joined them. Right? So they are generally smart. So we'll never know what they're writing, right? Let's be very honest here. So how does Cohesity's technology work? Cohesity's technology works very similar to how you do parenting. So you live with your children and you exactly know how they eat, how they sleep, how they behave. And one fine day that they don't wake up on time or they don't eat properly, you as a parent would ask them, are you okay? So that is exactly what Cohesity does. Every day we monitor your backup. We know what is your full backup, what is your incremental backup, every day how your Oracle does backup. So it is an 8 terabyte database. We know exactly you will do 8 terabytes plus or minus 10%. Incremental backup is probably 10 GB. So over a month, we use auto encoder and machine learning to learn about your environment. Oracle would be 100 GB every day, non-stop, maybe plus or minus, whatever it is, that's fine. But we exactly know the behavior of your environment. Very similar how that parent example I gave you. Now, one day, a ransomware comes into your Oracle server and encrypts everything. They give you a Bitcoin wallet, right? Next time I'll give you mine. But if you see that, and what happens is that Oracle database, once it is encrypted, our dedupe, our compression, our encryption will not work anymore. You know what I mean? Once it is being corrupted by them, we can't do the same backup. That day, our machine learning will tell us, hey, what was 10 GB until yesterday suddenly went to 1 terabyte. So suddenly my backup that was normally 10 GB has increased by 100 times, which is an unusual pattern.
So in other ways, when the data or your child misbehaves, and that's how you detect ransomware.
Absolutely. That is one of the way that we detect. But of course, with a file and a folder, there'll be entropy of data, the read data, the write data, the ingestion of data. So there are many patterns that it reads. But pretty much in summary, yes, you're correct.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Well, that's a first for me. So here we go. Okay, so we actually have. Oh,
Here as well. I think
sorry,
there
Yashina?
are many ways to stay ahead of all these threats, right? I think which is why many financial institutions, especially, they are never stopping in terms of implementing security controls or even educating their users so they can stay protected from ransomware or any other form of cyber threats. So Cohesity knows this, right? So apart from our machine learning capability, we also enable organizations to add security controls, applications, to be able to detect anomaly or understand how things are behaving strangely, and therefore, making your data more secure. From what Cohesity already have in our marketplace, should organization want to introduce additional applications such as vulnerability scanning tool or other data loss prevention tools, we enable the ability to add this application to the data platform. So enabling the easy addition of compute to data. So kind of like help to expedite the provisioning of security tools.
Thank you so much, Sheena, for the insight as well. I think oftentimes we do forget that these companies like Cohesity do not work in isolation. That they're also taking into account, like we said, third-party plans, but also governmental regulations. Actually, we have a lot of questions about the ransomware. We have another one regarding ransomware from Leong Chi Wei. I'll open the floor for either one of you to answer it. The question is, does Cohesity provide 100% resiliency against emerging new ransomware strains?
I love that question again. Thank you very much. That is the same efficacy that you go outside in the market and put COVID vaccine. How guaranteed are you? Right?
I see.
Right? So let's be very clear and there is nothing called 100% in the world, right? Unless we score in mathematics. And the best belief.
You've gotten 100 on mathematics before. I don't think that's ever happened to me.
So if you look at it, let's be very clear here, right? This is based on machine learning. So that's why I said the more we help organization, the more smarter the ransomware team does also. They can program better and they make it sneakier inside, right? They sneak into an enterprise through email. I tell you, if I receive an email saying that Maldives 4 days and 3 nights, I'm holiday deprived, what will I do? I'll do the same thing as you do. I'll double click it. That first thing, then the email comes in with a ransomware inside. Hello ransomware. Goes into your production server. Hello ransomware. Goes into your backup. Hello ransomware. How are you going to stop that? Is there anything in this world called 100%? Let's be very clear, right? So you have the ransomware because the security tools tried, they can't find it. And the ransomware programmers are very, very smart because they can write silent ransomware. It has a time clock. So the first 60 days, it will look like a database. After that, it can change colors. Unfortunately, relating to pandemic, very similar. Once it comes in, then how are we going to protect? So Cohesity is not your security tool. I'm just telling you security at the last level of defense, which is your bank, which is your final repository of your data. How important it is. If everything gets blown away, you have that last $1 million in your bank.
Thank you so much, Satish. That's our last question. I think before we go, Sheena, do you have anything to add to the answer?
I'm good with the answer, absolutely.
Okay, wonderful. I would like to thank the both of you guys for being with us and also for answering all the questions from the audiences. We're so sorry. And to the audiences, thank you so much for asking us these questions. We do have a lot of other questions as well from the audiences. We're so sorry that we could not address all of them. Unfortunately, we are out of time, and we could also get back to you guys later with some of the answers to the question. What do you think, Satish and Sheena?
Absolutely.
And so just to let everyone know, Cohesity does have a team in Malaysia. So feel free to check us out. Just go to LinkedIn, send me or Satish a message. We will definitely come back to you in no time.
All right, thank you. And also soon soon they will have a YouTube channel, which Satish has promised to enact on Cohesity's behalf, and we all have to follow it.
Absolutely.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you so much, guys.
Have fun, guys.
And
Thank
I
you.
will also let all of you guys, I will also come back and then let you guys know what is coming next. So look out for that. See you. See you. Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. Hi guys, I told you I'll be back. Thank you. I would just like to say thank you so much again to Sheena and Satish, and also for everyone for such a great Q&A session. Now, guys, we have come to the closing power panel of the STARS Digital Financing Conference. This panel discussion consists of a powerful lineup of international DeFi, blockchain, and cryptocurrency thought leaders and subject matter experts who are dialing in from Singapore, Switzerland, Taiwan, and Malaysia. Our first guest has over a decade of experience in energy, technology, and entrepreneurship. Luc Jodet is a part of the Ariani founding team, where he is well positioned to seamlessly blend both the technology and the business side of the equation to transform global digital standards for brands to benefit consumers with augmented ownership. Our second guest is the co-founder of the world's leading independent cryptocurrency data aggregator. He is TM Lee of CoinGecko. Since 2014, CoinGecko has been the trusted source of information for millions of cryptocurrency investors. It currently tracks more than 7,000 tokens from more than 450 exchanges. Our third guest is a regular speaker at blockchain conferences. Peter DiMeo globally leads IBM Systems confidential computing technology solutions for crypto assets that further secures institutional digital asset custody, exchange wallets, and tokenization of solutions. We are also very honored to have on this panel a crypto congressman, Jason Su, a former member of parliament in Taiwan. And among the crucial legislations he introduced and passed includes the FinTech Regulatory Sandbox Acts and a lot more. Jason is currently the Vice President of Taiwan FinTech Association. Lastly, joining the session is Anutosh of McKinsey and Company, who will be moderating the panel discussion. You might remember him from our first talk today. This is definitely the panel discussion that you do not want to miss, especially if you are sick of getting cryptocurrency information from the guy that invented Tesla. So remember, guys, if you have any questions for the panel, please do take this opportunity to send in and ask the questions that you do have on cryptocurrency, and we will address it during the panel session. All right, so now this hot button panel is getting ready. So stay tuned and say it with me. We will be back shortly. Bye, guys.
Okay, great. So welcome everybody to this panel discussion on the future of digital financing, enter DeFi. So quite a mouthful of a topic. In a nutshell, we're going to talk about DeFi in the context of digital financing. We've got a pretty esteemed panel. We can cover a fair amount of bases, but as with DeFi, time is always short and there's too much happening within that, so you have to bear with us a little bit. So the panel can bring in many different views from a fintech to a new business that's getting built, leveraging creators to legislation, lawmakers, technology, consulting, advisory. So lots of different perspectives are going to be brought in. But maybe I'll just get us started straight away on the topic at hand, and it's decentralized finance, which means we are disintermediating the existing financial participants, and in particular the banks. And maybe, I guess if I start, Peter, with you and sort of get your views on what do you think happens to the roles of banks as DeFi takes off? How does the role really change? If you can start us off there, please.
Okay, yeah, sure. Peter DeMeo with IBM. When I think about the banks, primarily what I do is to actually work with banks, particularly with key management and digital asset custody, infrastructure. So I do have an opportunity to talk to a lot of the largest banks. And in general, I think the mega banks, the State Streets, the City banks, the Bank of New York Mellons, Deutsche Banks, all of these large institutions, they all have a digital asset plan. They all have strategies and they're all executing. Generally, custody is the first thing out. But I think we've heard State Street announced, for example, they'll also be looking at ETFs and other kinds of products as well. The big question behind all of this, of course, is where does DeFi sit? And what's the benefit? Brian Brooks, who was the OCC chair in the previous administration, coined this term, or at least he popularized it, a self-driving bank. And I really enjoyed that particular thing because it implied a number of things that really aren't the case today. I mean, for example, just purely a smart contract-driven, decentralized, organization without really any humans involved, right? So it changes the way that the banks work. For example, you can derive your interest rates based upon purely supply and demand algorithmically, rather than having some kind of committee set it or something to that effect. You can do exchanges without brokers, right? You can do lending without having loan officers or credit committees. You can have services around the clock. And quite frankly, in the era of inclusion, this also reduces opportunities for discrimination against borrowers when it comes to credit decisions. There is also, I think, with blockchain DLT technologies, an element of reduced risk and fraud because, quite frankly, there aren't any humans involved. And also, I think there's, generally speaking, a greater efficiency on how various operations can work. That being said, if you were to provide a license to, let's say, a decentralized autonomous organization, well, I don't think we can do that yet because there's no humans involved. Generally speaking, it's the bankers that actually you want to look after, and they're the ones receiving, the charter. So being able to license a smart contract is definitely something that we're looking forward to seeing happen at some point, right? But we're not there yet. So I think directionally, the benefits of a DAO structure, which, by the way, in Wyoming was just made into law, is definitely something that we should all be kind of looking at and looking forward to, quite frankly.
Got it. Okay. No, thanks for that, Peter, to get us started on the broad overview here. Maybe I can go to TN next, because that's sort of the completely crypto-native world that you bring in your perspectives on. How do you see the evolution so far from tokens to NFTs? Earlier on, we were talking about the whole identity as well coming into play. Can you just talk us through, just briefly, on how you see the evolution coming through, please?
Yeah, so thanks. So this is KM for CoinGecko, and basically just trying to make it brief on the history of things. So I think when Bitcoin was launched about 10 years plus ago, the only way for you to trade this Bitcoin would be through a centralized marketplace. And this tends to be either some sort of P2P platforms or an exchange. And this exchange has been operating for about maybe 5 years or 6 years plus. They're sort of evolving into sort of like a bank, right? So they take custody of your Bitcoin, and then they provide additional services like borrow lending, ability to earn a yield on your deposit, ability to trade, basically financial services, right? And then later on, when DeFi happened, suddenly you are able to do all these things without going through an exchange, right? You could borrow tokens from someone through a smart contract. You could provide liquidity to a pool, and then thereby people could then trade on that token pair, and then you could make a yield from the trading fees, right? So, but the thing about this is that it's really, really difficult for anyone to figure out, right? So not only you have to learn how to use these protocols, you have to figure out how to manage your keys, right? To make sure that your tokens are protected. So you can think of this as email, like before Gmail, before Hotmail, where you have to run your own servers and then you connect to the network to send email to people, you store your own emails. It's just really, really difficult and cumbersome. And going back to the question on banks, like what would they be doing? I think they wouldn't be entirely disrupted, but they have to evolve their business model to a point that I think one area that they are good at is managing customers' funds and giving them trust to their customers, right? So they could act as a on-ramp services for regular people to start integrating with all these DeFi services, for example, to get a yield. Sure, they could use an exchange, but exchange do not have that same historical operational trust compared to a bank, right? So that's where I see it's going. Like it's heading towards a situation where regular people want to leverage on DeFi and get advantage of the yield and have more economic opportunity, but there needs to be some sort of on-ramp to get all these people on board into this platform. And yeah, so I think banks will be in a very good position to play that role.
Makes sense. Before we go to, before we go to Jason, because he'll have a very good perspective across all of them, I wanted to touch on Luke at this point, because you bring in the whole sort of exciting creator economy to life in the context of DeFi. Maybe just give us your perspectives on how you see DeFi connecting in with the sort of realty economy in a way.
Yeah, of course. So yes, I'm co-founder of Ariani, and we create NFT-based digital identities, kind of like digital passports for luxury goods. It's already live with brands such as Breitling, Audemars Piguet, and other brands like Bash Mugler. And what's really interesting here is that, of course, this passport is a proof of authenticity and proof of ownership, but it's also like a gateway to bring physical products into the digital world. And here, where we see DeFi is what we're interested in a, let's say, medium term, because there's still quite a lot of things that needs to fall in place for it to happen. Is how can you actually use NFTs and those assets as collateral for loans, for instance, or how can you make them interact with DeFi? And here, the way we see DeFi is as a new brick into the different components that you can use to create experiences for users online when you start being able to bring those physical goods inside the virtual world. So of course, as I said, it's there's still quite a lot of aspects that are exploratory, but there are already some really interesting experiments that exist, like Realty and what they're doing with Aave. MakerDAO is also really interested in trying to figure out how to bring those physical assets into the virtual world. And so that's really where our perspective comes from, is how can we start bringing other things than just purely digital assets into DeFi, because we really see it as a core component of that we can compose with and build with in the future.
Maybe Luke, just double clicking on that composability point, right? I mean, taking an example of a watch or some other collectible, can you just sort of explain where you see DeFi being beneficial? I mean, what parts of it can it enhance? What can it solve?
Yeah, absolutely. So, especially in the watch industry, I mean, a big part of the story around watches is the idea that it's a reserve of value. It's actually it's not just a consumable; it's an asset. I mean, it's a big part of what luxury actually promises. Patek Philippe, for instance, always says you don't actually own a Patek Philippe; you merely hold it for the next generation. Here, the question would be, how can you actually tap those assets which are sitting idle, and for a lot of people actually are just sitting in a safe somewhere or at a custodian already? How could you actually tap some kind of financial assets out of it and use it as collateral for a loan? Is probably like the easiest way to actually show what could potentially be explored. Now, you could also imagine a bunch of other applications that have to do with yield generating assets, whether it's because you can. We talk a lot about physical products, physical luxury goods, but there are more and more digital luxury goods that are being built as well. And maybe there is a market that's building around the idea of digital skins or digital goods that are in game and can actually generate yield, whether it's because you're renting a specific outfit for a special event on Fortnite or another metaverse, or I think Tim earlier was talking about some in-game assets, which is a bit further away from what we're doing, but some in-game assets such as Axie Infinities, so little creatures that are fighting and can generate yield by earning crypto. So there's plenty of different things to explore. As I said, the easiest for us today is to illustrate it, and the one that we're exploring more is how can you actually use your valuable assets as collateral for loans.
Got it. Okay, thanks for that. Maybe building on this conversation, Jason, very keen to get your perspective, especially how do you propagate innovation, right, and continue to drive innovation in the DeFi space as it comes through. And if you could talk about like the fintech sandbox that you've championed in the past, what have you seen as the waterfront of innovation here? Would be great to get your input.
Sure. So I was a tech entrepreneur before I become a politician. So I'm this rare animal that combines both policy and technology. So when I served in the parliament in Taiwan from 2016 and 2020, I made a very strong focus that I want to bridge the gap between public policy and technology. And blockchain and crypto really becoming my main focus for my term as a legislator. And one of the first legislations that I worked on is the very first sandbox law in Asia, which we model after UK's sandbox law, which basically allows startups to work with big banking institutions without having to worry about legal liabilities. And fast forward to 2021, the whole crypto movement going from ICO to DeFi have really signaled a new wave of digital assets on the rise. Now, it's undeniable that the countries around the world, particularly federal governments and the central governments and international financial institutions, are looking at cryptocurrency in a different light today. Today, for example, China published their eRMB, which is basically their own digital money. And US is contemplating a digital dollar. And obviously, other countries are studying the possibility of doing their own CBDC. So it's really important that today's regulators catch up with technology and really understand what exactly is going on the field. And I think Luke had a really good point on the NFT, particularly on the digital asset and also the authentication or the proof of ownership. And I think this would spread across different spectrum, from the land property to the ownership of a certificate to your digital footprint. So the way I see it, right now I'm serving as the vice president of Taiwan FinTech Association. We are now looking at addressing a whole set of new asset class on the virtual world, going from the your points that you collected from playing games, or how you trade and sell, buy and sell your cryptocurrencies. And all of these things are pushing the legacy finances institutions to rethink about their strategy in terms of how they reach out to millennials or the younger generations. How do today's people in their 20s, think about what they own and the stuff they own, or even how they think about money? It's not the physical banknotes anymore. It's your digital digits on your phone. How you trade your Bitcoin and how you even get your buy and sell stuff. So I think there's a lot that we need to understand, and I think there's also a whole set of conversations need to be had between the industry, the regulators, and as well as the practitioners. And I want to add one more thing. I think the case in point this past week was the Ecuador. Really, the kind of wayward president, the 40-year-old president announced that Bitcoin will be the legal tender for the country. And although, whether or not it's practical is still up in there, but I think you can see countries start looking alternative ways to look at, finance or how the banking industries work. So I want to pause here.
Yeah, no, that's a very interesting point where you paused as well, Jason. But thank you for giving us the very, very broad overview and the cross-section across, policy as well as innovation at the same time. But you touched upon interoperability, and you touched a lot about technology and standards and platforms. Peter, maybe very briefly, I could come back to you and get a view on interoperability across the technology platforms. What does it mean in the context of DeFi?
Well, I think I would start.
I think it's important to know. Sorry, go ahead, Peter.
Sorry, Peter, you can go ahead. Thanks, mate.
Oh, was it directed to me? I'm sorry.
You can go ahead, Peter. It was directed.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it today, of course, Ethereum is the gold standard for all of the DeFi platforms, and yet we're seeing a number of the other chains become more viable. And certainly, if you're a financial institution, you don't want to have a lock-in into any one particular chain. You want the ability for interoperability. And I think one of the defining elements of DeFi is composability. in the sense that you're able to, be through API, loosely coupled APIs, create a whole set of financial products, on top of, yield farming is a great example, right, of different services. And then, being able to make that work fast, and easier, like Polygon is doing on top of Ethereum. And I guess, Luke, you're working with those guys as well for that very reason. And being able to take your your handbag NFTs and be able to, put them on Tezos or Algorand or whatever, right? Because at the end of the day, do you really care what chain it sits on top? It's really more about making sure that can travel, in a unique way, in a non-fungible way, as opposed to having copies someplace else. And quite frankly, even if you move out of DeFi for a second, central bank digital currencies is another area where, this interoperability, cross-chain interoperability, let's say layer 3, applications, that's where they want to sit. They don't want to be, dragged down into the protocol level, or even perhaps layer 2 for that matter. So I think directionally, as we see Ethereum 2 start to take hold, and the other chains becoming, let's see, more used more, I should say, for very popular applications like Uniswap, for example. If you look at the DeFi top 10 list, it's all Ethereum all the way down, right? But you can probably just imagine that you'll have various like Uniswap and Aave and so forth working on Tezos for that matter, right? So it's just a matter of time before we start to see cross-chain interoperability, and as well as being able to build applications that are taking advantage of that.
Got it. Thanks for that, Peter. Maybe building on that layering of DeFi, because it's a very important concept to also get your head across. But maybe TM, sort of going back, I'm going to do one more round robin here, unfortunately, but going to you. When you think about the sort of explosion of tokens that's happening in the crypto world and DeFi more sort of specifically, how do you think of as an exchange, through which ones do you list, and what criteria do you put on them? How do you find them? What role do you play in that? So it's a pretty broad question, but if you could give us some perspectives on it, please. We can't hear you, TM.
Yeah, sorry about that. So what we do at CoinGecko is basically we try to aggregate tokens, right? So wherever they are traded anywhere, we try to aggregate them. So we're not really an exchange where sort of a due diligence required to ensure that our customers are protected and whatnot. We're basically an information provider, and we want to cover as much as we can. So maybe I can just talk a little bit about how exchanges do their listing process, right? So typically in the past, before DeFi, the exchange is the only avenue projects or tokens can get a market going with some sort of liquidity. So you can imagine exchanges could be those that are regulated, which are more stringent with their rules. They want to ensure that tokens are not securities. They want to ensure that the project is a legitimate one, is run by people that they know. They can identify who are the team members. And there are some exchanges that are a little bit more, free for all, where they just list whatever token as long as a listing fee. And then you can imagine listing fee can then go up to as high as 50 BTC or whatever when the market is hot, right? But then when DeFi happened, it sort of democratized the whole listing processes. You don't really need to go to an exchange to create a market, right? You could just create a liquidity pool, and then people could just trade on top of that. So that power itself has created hundreds and hundreds of new token projects, ranging from all kinds of weird tokens to legitimate projects that they're right now not beholden to the centralized exchange to charge them a fee, and you can then start to innovate with all kinds of different ways to test different ideas and see which one really, really works. And that has opened up a lot of possibilities. So I think for us at CoinGecko, basically looking at all the tokens that's being going to the market, obviously there's going to be some really, really strange one that survives for only 1 to 2 weeks because of some experimentation that they're working on. And for us, we really look at the liquidity that goes into the pool. Are the distribution of tokens distributed enough? Does it survive the test of time? Can we identify who are the team members? So I think very, very standard due diligence that anyone would do when you are trying to identify another party. I think this is something that everyone will have to do in this space because it's so trustless and decentralized that you have to do your own due diligence to ensure that you don't get fall for the wrong trap. So Every time, I wanted to tell people that whenever you read something in this space, always put on like a skeptical mind, because a skeptical cap, because whatever that you see on paper may not actually be the way it is in this case.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I mean, amongst the discussion that we've had so far, we've touched on a lot of things. One of the things we haven't gone into is users. And Luke, I wanted to go back to you for that. I mean, you had a very good perspective in the context of NFTs that you're operating in, where the users are based, where the sort of who you're connecting them with. Any color that you can provide, especially given we're based in Asia, the users from Asia?
Yeah, so I think that we started 4 years ago, and especially with the market the type of market we're targeting, the luxury and fashion industry, a big part of this, it's honestly a crypto first or crypto native customer base. And so a big part of what we're working on and what we work on constantly with brands is how to create experiences where the kind of crypto keys and crypto, how do you keep custody of your keys is facilitated and really is almost to a certain level hidden by the interface. However, an important part of what we're building is to always enable, the super user that is crypto native to actually hold their keys if they'd like to, and not have to rely on a custodian. But definitely, I mean, Breitling has several hundreds of thousands of customers that hold our certificates now. Same thing for Bash and a bunch of other brands that we work with, and an overwhelming majority are not doing self custody of their keys, or at least they're following all the instructions that we have pushed onto them as to how to manage their keys. And so, and they don't necessarily understand what we mean by by private keys. So we do need to have, because of we're looking at this customer base that is not crypto first or crypto native, we do have to create interfaces that facilitate and to a certain extent centralized interfaces that facilitates the access and custody of keys and usage of crypto. Now, to us, that does not mean that DeFi, which is as it was described earlier by Team or Peter and Jason, as a purely peer-to-peer infrastructure when you're in full control, is not something interesting for us, because it's still something where application builders and application developers can actually go tap into those bricks and build experiences, build services that are themselves much easier to build, because you do not have either a bank or a gatekeeper, let's say, in the middle. So that's how we see DeFi as much more of a developer tool that enables easy integration with what we're building, more than a fully zero custody future for the customers of the brands we work with.
Got it. Brilliant. I mean, we're talking about decentralized finance, and we have a moderator moderating this very amazing group. So I think I'll let you self-moderate anyway. But I think one of the things I wanted to get the group's view, and anyone can please answer that, would be, what's the key unlock that you think is required for DeFi to grow? Maybe would be good to get your thoughts, and I would stop moderating from here on in so we can self-moderate.
So the keys to unlock, you mean that? So
key unlocks for scaling, basically. Like what is
of course. Maybe I'll talk. I mean, I'll just to continue on my point, and then I'll move to Peter or for what banks are, what banks can be useful, and then maybe Jason on the regulation side, maybe a little bit. For us, it's easy interfaces. The main thing is it's still difficult to for a non crypto savvy person to actually access a lot of those tools. There are some applications starting to do a good job at facilitating this, and I know this is something that we try to do and that's what we do on a daily basis, is how to really make it much easier for a new generation of crypto users that are not crypto natives. But to me, that's the big key to unlock, and there's not going to be a revolution next 6 months. It's going to be evolution, and improvement over the months and years and probably decades coming.
Well, I think for me, as a regulator and as someone who's been also in the tech and on the government, I think the most important thing is the educational aspect of the cryptocurrency. I think that what we are seeing is a lack of the mainstream use case for the cryptocurrency. And obviously, I would say NFT would be a real good anchor to start with, because it's something that a lot of young people can associate with. And the whole boom of the creators economy really give rise to how fans and or the younger generations contributed to something they passionately love. So I would say, as a regulator or as a government official, we need to look at what the future generation is thinking about, how they view the entire economic system and how they strive to be a part of it. And I think for a long time, people are struggling to understand what Bitcoin is, except to see the ups and downs of the price, or someone tweeted something on the and then the price went crazy. But I think what we need to see at this point in time is to really have something that is solid, like an NFT, and really develop use cases that can follow through. So I think we start to see it, and we start to see the wider applications in different fields, in esports, in the actual sports, in the luxury goods, in the ownership of certificates. So I really see it as really the genesis of the cryptocurrency coming into the mainstream via the vehicle of NFT. So I feel that this right now is important, and the government and officials and the industries should begin the conversations as early as possible in terms of how to bring this to a mainstream.
Yes, just to add on to that, I think 2021 is a pretty key year. Maybe because of the pandemic or what, I'm not too sure, that got people to expedite to getting into digital and technology. But we have seen with the rise of NFT, right? It's like a gateway drug to get people into crypto. Like initially, you tell people about Bitcoin, you tell people about Ethereum, they don't really get it. But when you tell them about NFT, about collectibles, collectible cards, trading cards, game items, they start to tick, right? And then that could be one way to get into crypto. So that's the first part, right? And the second one is Ethereum. It doesn't scale, right? Like you can only do a limited number of transactions every given minute, and that of course increases the transaction fee to a point that I remember it takes like maybe $50 to make a swap on the DEXs, on the decentralized exchange, and that completely pushes out all the regular users out from the space. So now with all the scaling layer 2, like new blockchains, dedicated blockchains that are created to process more transactions or to be built to serve a certain purpose, like game items transaction and stuff like that, all would open up the possibility for more and more people to participate in this economy. So I think this year is a key year in terms of turning point to get adoption of the mass into crypto. And it will be much more interesting in years to come as all this technology gets more mature and people start to get more comfortable working with digital assets that they control themselves.
Yeah, I might add on that. In my daughter created an NFT, and she did it at the height, and so she paid $100 in gas, unfortunately. She's of the younger generation, Gen Z or whatever they are. And you think about kind of getting back to the original thought here with the banks. She does not have a bank account, right? She is of the generation that may never have a bank account. They might just sign up for Venmo and do crypto transactions and everything on their phone and not even know what a private key is, right? Meanwhile, you have like the banks where basically I think the adoption, quite frankly, they're starting off very slow. They're starting with stable coins, internal stablecoin networks, basically following some kind of fiat-based analog with respect to adoption because it's regulatory compliant. So the banks are going to be like, they're not going to be an NFT land anytime soon, right? At least the big ones. And then you have all of these others, mostly payment services companies, right? That will be able to then interface with like OpenSea, Nifty Gateway, whatever other NFT platforms. And in my mind, that's where a lot of this action, at least the NFT side of things, is going to be happening. Is on those kind of platforms, and then competitive banks like Kraken becoming a bank, and custodians becoming OCC regulated banks like Anchorage and so forth. So it's going to be really interesting, and how NFTs are really like driving a lot of this, because people want, my daughter's generation, they want this stuff. Yeah, they don't know anything about self custody. They don't know what a private key is. They don't care, and it's the same generation that, quite frankly, gives away their privacy anyway. Not trying to equate privacy and a private key, however. So we definitely need to, I think, as a community, figure that one out, right? Like, how do you have all your NFTs sitting in your trust wallet on your phone, right? And then what? When you lose your phone or you get stolen or whatever, you need another one, and it's like, how do you manage that, right? I think that's really, when it boils down to it, it's key management. It's a key management problem, and how do you solve that at a massive scale where you don't actually have to worry about it? That's one of the things I'll be following. I think that's a real interesting area.
And I'll just add that your daughter is really not alone. I mean, I've been in crypto for 5 years now. It was really difficult to get my wife interested in buying just Ethereum or Bitcoin, but for the last 6 months, NFT is the only thing she talks about. She loves art. She loves this entire aspect, and it all of a sudden it made sense. It's like even more than what I've been doing for the last 4 years. And so it's and she's slightly older than your daughter. She's more of a millennial generation, but it really is something where I really felt it, where it was a clear proof that right now is something really important. Something really important is happening. People are starting to make sense of what crypto actually is, thanks to NFT.
Yeah, I think it also really shows a bottom-up movement. I think when government try to crack down on crypto and try to figure out a set of rules to govern them, but then the fact is that it's the users that really is taking the control. And when government come up with a really complicated regulations, then which makes business really not viable. But I think when it comes to user generated economy, user empowered actions, and I think NFT is really at the forefront of what will really drive the crypto to the mainstream. So I'm really hopeful, and I think we can really bestow our hope to the next generations, since they understand it and they grow up in it. They are the natives.
Okay, I think we are probably at the end of our time. I think some of us have to go. So I will just say thanks everybody for allowing me to have this conversation with you, and it's been really illuminating a lot of different topics. And I think DeFi it's going to be DeFi summer too, right? We're coming up. what's the next sushi swap? The vampire attack. Where's all that? It's hopefully not, but actually, quite frankly, that particular episode actually added a lot of value, right? Because I think Uniswap then created a governance token, and the whole process, the whole ecosystem, and it was better for it. So it'll be really interesting to see how things transpire this year. So guys, thanks so much, for allowing me to join you today. I guess I'll just ask if anyone had any final words. I'll go to the left. TM, do you want to have anything you want to close with?
Yeah, nothing too much. I mean, for those of you who are curious about crypto or DeFi, the best place to start is just start like educating yourself, learning about it, know what are the risks, and then because knowledge will compound over time as this space gets more and more complex, and it will always stay with you at all times. So never too late to keep learning about DeFi and crypto. Yeah.
Great. And then Lucas, let's just go. Let's some final thoughts, and then we'll close out.
Right. I'd second what TM said. It's never too late to come in. There's always more things. You're still really early in here. There is also, I would say, there's also more than just DeFi, and I mean we've actually shown it today, talking about NFTs quite a lot. The financial aspect of crypto is an important one. It's something that brings a lot of value, but there is really a lot of other things that are being built in there. And if you don't find if you don't find really interest in DeFi itself, there are other things to explore. There's gaming there's on-chain gaming. There is, of course, the NFT art scene is quite interesting, and a bunch of different creator coins with how can you support create communities around influencers or artists. There's really a lot of things to look into, and I encourage anybody to go explore and start learning. And really, you're not late. Come join us.
Yeah,
Jason.
So I think that we've come to an era where we start to really rethink what money is and how money works. And I think that money used to command authority, money used to command power, but it's also liberated to think that we are able to send money from A to B and without having to go through a middleman or intermediary. And I think NFT is powerful in that sense that we know we have the ownership to something that will rise their value over time. And also we are able to transact at our own will. So I think this will give the whole generations of new ideas for creating new businesses and also creating a new set of economic ecosystem. So I'm quite hopeful that governments also need to evolve and transform to learn about how the virtual world works and what exactly is going on in terms of people who are looking at the future trends of the digitalization. And certainly COVID has propelled us to move even faster. So now it's never too late, and it's important to look at some of the applications and also to understand it also from the pure concept of what money is point of view.
Very good, thank you. So I want to thank also the Star Media Group for having us here today and getting us all together. It's been a really good session, and I think with that we'll go ahead and conclude. So thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Hi guys, we hope you enjoyed the closing power panel session as much as we did. That was very much entertaining. That was really good banter, and I really hope that it's also given you great insights on the future of digital financing. So thank you again to Luke, TM, Peter, Jason, and Anutosh for such an insightful and engaging discussion. It was definitely an honor to have you powering our event. Guys, we are almost coming to the end of the Star Digital Financing Conference. On behalf of Star Media Group, I would like to thank all of our sponsors, partners, and our 30 multinational speakers once again for joining us on the road to shaping a cashless economy and powering a cashless society. The exclusive exabyte partner is Visa. Our terabyte partner is Cohesity, Fundastic, and Red Hat. Our gigabyte partner is Alliance Bank. Our megabyte partner is Experian and Public Bank. Our virtual roundtable partner is IBM. Our knowledge partners are Boston Consulting Group, Kantar Malaysia, KPMG in Malaysia, and McKinsey and Company. Our supporting partner is Cybersecurity Malaysia. Our mobile messaging partner is SendQuick, and our conference partner is Cisco. On behalf of Star Media Group, we are so very happy to have had you on board to be able to enrich this event and share all of the information that we have. And also thank you to all of the audience members for staying with us in this 2-day power-packed programs of the Digital Financing Live Virtual Conference. And as I have mentioned mentioned earlier, here is your one last chance to win these cool prizes. All you need to do is to help us complete a short survey by scanning the QR code that is shown on your screen, or you can go to bit.ly/DGFinSurvey4. That's bit.ly/DIGIFINSURVEY4. You can also see it below there. So, guys, Star Media Group's Digital Financing Conference is officially a wrap. If you've encountered any inconvenience from our conference program in these last 2 days, please do accept our sincerest apologies, and please do share your feedback in the survey as we continue to curate greater event programs and to provide you with better event experiences. Most importantly, we hope that you have benefited from this event, or that it has at least given you a better perspective or has sparked a different thought process in your journey to transform or disrupt financial services. Also, if you need any assistance from us or would like to learn more about any of our upcoming events, please do connect with us at events@thestar.com.my. Let's stay in touch to explore collaboration opportunities at our Digital X Data events. Once again, my name is Myra Baiti and I'm signing out. Thank you, and we look forward to hosting you again at the next Star Media Group event. Till then, stay safe, be innovative, and keep disrupting.
find yourself rushing to send trade transaction documents before banks cut off time? Are you having trouble tracking your transaction status? Do you dread going through endless phone calls just to find out your available balance? Well, you don't have to anymore. Introducing the Alliance BizSmart mobile app, the first in Malaysia that lets you submit trade transactions anytime, anywhere. No more hard copy documents. Submit everything online. Track your available balance and transaction status online. Fast disbursement of funds within 24 hours upon approval. Just follow these steps. 1. Log into the BizSmart mobile app. 2. Key in the transaction details. 3. Upload the documents and submit for payment authorizer approval. And 4. You'll receive a notification upon approval. Now, you can spend more time on growing your business. The Alliance BizSmart mobile app. Speak to our dedicated relationship manager to find out more.
Enterprise data. It's your most valuable resource, but managing your data is challenging and complex, and it's not generating enough strategic value. Your data is siloed, and it's fragmented both within those silos as well as across data centers, remote offices, and clouds. Multiple point solutions to manage your data further compound the fragmentation problem. You also maintain multiple copies of the same data, which is inefficient and expensive. And your data is dark. It's almost impossible to see what you have and where it's stored. To extract any value, you have to move volumes of data across silos and locations. All these challenges create a significant problem for the enterprise. We call this mass data fragmentation. At Cohesity, we take a revolutionary approach to bringing value to your data. We looked at how hyperscalers like Google answered this challenge in the consumer space. They consolidated consumer data onto a web-scale file system and added a layer of manageability to make it appear as a single platform. Then they exposed the value of that data through apps and services. At Cohesity, we are doing the same for enterprise data. We start by consolidating infrastructure with a software-defined web-scale platform. And just like Google first focused on building a great search engine, we focused on creating a great backup solution across clouds and data centers. Then we eliminated additional silos by bringing together your archive, file shares, dev test, and analytics. We provide one global management console so you can search and manage all your data from a single interface, no matter where it lives. Next, you can run apps and services to run your business-critical needs, such as ransomware protection, compliance checks, analytics, e-discovery, and much more. All in a single software solution that spans your data centers and multi-cloud environments. Cohesity, data management redefined.
Today and every day, you are doing the impossible. In a time that's been completely unpredictable, you're doing it with so little time and under so much pressure. You are juggling and jabbing, mobilizing and modernizing, remote learning, and emphasis on the learning.
Sorry, guys. I don't know how to turn this thing off.
You are traveling and transforming, researching and resilienting. Okay, that's not a word, but you know what I mean. You are watching and welcoming, opening and, oh, wait, now you're closing, and now you're opening again. For businesses around the world, it's a real challenge because increasing disruption comes with increasing complexity and an increasing need to have today's problems solved yesterday. That's why businesses are rethinking everything. Using hybrid cloud and AI with IBM, they're working not just productively, but predictively. Automating processes to simplify the complex, keeping private data protected, and adapting to ever-changing consumer habits. In a year that was like no other, businesses are taking a scientific approach with IBM to invent, discover, and solve problems like no one else. There's a lot to do, but together, we've got this. Together, we push, prove, demo, dare, work, wow, solve, spark, think.
Change happens, with or without our input. It can be imposed upon us, pushed at us, mandated. But we can take control and transform with intent. We can choose to embrace change, openly. To us, change is a state of being, not a box to check. It's the journey and the destination. It's a wider view, revealing better business outcomes. But the path is critical, because you can't change the whole without transforming the way. So it's time we leave impossible behind and open possibilities. Let's use open technology to work smarter. Let's open the process for efficiency and freedom. And let's build an open culture on empowerment and collaboration. Together, we can put digital transformation into practice. It can't happen in a vacuum, but an organization can transform using an open approach. With Red Hat, you can open your future. Open your technology. Open your process. Open your culture. Open possibility.
Visa pioneered the electronic payments business more than 60 years ago, envisioning a world in which paying for something could be translated into electrons and photons that move across the globe at the speed of light.
The consumer may access an infinite range of goods and services whenever he chooses, wherever he may be.
Today, there are 3.4 billion Visa credentials around the world, from the largest cities to remote communities across the globe.